Good evening from downtown Sioux Falls. Welcome to the Belbas Theater inside the Washington Pavilion, where tonight the Dakota Scout and Sioux Falls Live present the third and final Republican primary debate between the GOP candidates asking for your votes in the 2026 South Dakota governor's race. Broadcasting live in front of more than 300 voters, community leaders, and party activists, the four candidates make the case why they should lead our great state for the next 4 years. This historic exercise of civics is made possible by Poet, Market Beat, Howman Insurance, the South Dakota Corn Growers Association, the South Dakota Soybean Association, and Mitchell Technical College.
Welcome everyone here in this beautiful theater and watching on television and online. I am Patrick Lally, editor of Sioux Falls Live.
And I'm Jonathan Ellis with the Dakota Scout. The questions you will hear tonight were curated by journalists from both news organizations.
Over the next 90 minutes, the candidates will take questions on the issues shaping this race, from property taxes and economic growth to education, public safety, and the future of South Dakota's workforce.
The rules for tonight's debate were agreed to in advance by the campaigns. Candidates will have set time limits for responses and rebuttals, and we ask our audience to hold applause until the commercial breaks.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Republican candidates for governor of South Dakota. First, Aberdeen businessman Toby Doden, Congressman Dusty Johnson, House Speaker John Hanson, and Governor Larry Roden. Please welcome them. As per tradition, we start with opening statements, the order of which has been determined by a random draw. Mr. Hanson, you have 1 minute. Please begin.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. My name is John Hanson. I'm a husband, I'm a father of 6 young kids, I'm a Christian, and I'm a conservative Republican. You know, real leadership is not about the multi-million-dollar TV self-promotional ad campaigns. It's not about the DC-style talking points. It's about who shows up for you and for your family when your life and your liberty is on the line. And that's why I have been fighting for the people of this state. On the east side, we ended eminent domain abuse by the Green New Deal carbon sequestration pipeline. On the west side, we stood with the Maud family as they were under attack, their life and their liberty, by overzealous federal agents. Statewide, I led the way, and we defeated constitutional abortion amendment G and kept South Dakota a pro-life state. I have fought for you for lower sales taxes, lower property taxes, returning spending back to the people. And that is exactly the kind of leadership, putting you first, that I'm going to bring to the governor's office in Pierre.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Mr. Roden, you are next.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm Governor Larry Roden, and you know, when I thought about what I wanted to say in 1 minute, I thought back to my first day as governor. And at that time, our country, our state, were going through some pretty rough waters. And even elected in South Dakota, the biggest class of freshmen that we've ever seen. And so in my first inaugural address, 2 days after I took office, I announced that the cornerstone of my administration would be civility. The cornerstone. Because I'd seen, you know, the turmoil between the legislators and the people of our state, and the tribes and the press, and we were going to turn over a new leaf. I'd served 16 years in the legislature, and so I had a very strong idea what it took to build relationships and get things accomplished. And we've accomplished a tremendous amount the last 2 years, and that's what I'll bring to the table if I'm elected governor for another 4.
Thank you, Mr. Roden. And Mr. Doden.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being here. I am Toby Doden. I'm the outsider. I'm the businessman in this race. Politicians are spending this state into oblivion. They've doubled the state budget in 8 years. They've doubled your property taxes in 5 years. And now this year alone, the politicians have raised your sales tax 3 separate times. It's the biggest tax increase in the history of South Dakota. It's not sustainable. I'm going to appear to cut taxes, to cut spending, to grow the economy, and yes, I am going to phase out your property taxes. And the politicians that say it can't be done, well, they should stand aside while I fight to make it happen. I'm going to appear to bring back common sense decision-making, fiscal responsibility, and you better believe I'm going to make this state more affordable again. Thank you.
Thank you, and Mr. Johnson.
So what makes a good governor? Somebody with a vision or somebody who gets things done? Actually, the best governors have both. They dream big and they deliver results. I've talked a lot this campaign about big ideas, proven policies to make South Dakota better, but I'm also a guy who has gotten things done. As Chief of Staff to Governor Dugard, I helped cut $127 million in state spending. In the private sector, I created jobs. In Congress, I've worked with President Trump to secure the border, eliminate woke for our military, and cut taxes. Those are real conservative victories. Now, South Dakota is a great state, but in some key areas, we are falling behind. It's going to take energy and vision to build the best South Dakota, and that's why I'm running for governor.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We'll now move to questions, and we're going to begin with a series of individual questions for each candidate that will be specific to them. We start with Mr. Roden. Sir, you've promoted your record as cutting taxes, but your policies also open the door to higher sales taxes. In some cases, people could be paying up to 9% if you have every possible sales tax available. Can you explain how that amounts to tax relief for South Dakotans?
Yeah, I very much can, and I appreciate the opportunity to do so, because that's been touted by some people, these increases, and they're false on their face. First of all, if we talk, and we could go through them each individually, and I will, first of all, the 0.3% that John and I used the revenue off of to fund the largest property tax cut in state's history. That's not even on the table, because that was going to happen with or without any legislation. In fact, there were legislators already talking about how they wanted to spend that. We decided when we passed that it was better to give it back to the people than just spend it. So that's off the table. The other two are local option sales tax. The 1% was a separate bill for municipalities like Sioux Falls. Many of you heard the State of the City address when your mayor declared that if that would have been in effect when they built the Premier Center, that would have saved the citizens of Sioux Falls $54 million. And again, we just granted the legislature, I signed the bill that allowed municipalities with a 60% supermajority vote. Everything went to the people. So we talk about local control. This is the ultimate in local control, to let them decide what to do with their money. And so, yes, I supported that and signed it. I was happy to do so. The third was a ½ cent that was part of the Hansen-Roden, I will call it, property tax bill. Out of time.
Mr. Golden, you alluded to this in your opening statement of property taxes. You've vowed to eliminate them. You say you've identified new revenue streams. What are those revenue streams? How much money will they generate? And how do you get public buy-in for this plan?
Well, you get public buy-in because there's fixed income seniors that have had to sell their homes because of property taxes. I've traveled this state exhaustively for 2 years. I'm the only candidate up here that has done that. I've done almost 200 bus stop tours, and I can tell you, Jonathan, everywhere I've gone, my wife and I and my son have met people that have literally had to sell their home because their property taxes have doubled. The politicians will never do anything. They tax and spend. And so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to be the first governor in a generation that's actually going to go to peer and cut spending. These politicians, Dusty, Larry, John, all of them, they talk about cutting spending, but all they do is shovel the money around. Larry Roden, John Hanson's property tax relief bill, they shoveled the money from property tax to sales tax relief. That's not cutting taxes. I'm going to cut spending. My Doge is going to do the first statewide financial audit in this state's history. If you think they found money in Minnesota, you don't think they're going to find money here? All politicians have redundancies, inefficiencies, waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm going to be the first governor in this state's history to find it. And then our economy is flat. I'm sorry, we've taken the same sales tax revenue today we did 3 years ago, but our spending is 38% higher. We have to grow the economy, widen the tax base. 30 years I've been doing this in the private sector, real world experience, building dozens of successful companies. These guys get their paychecks signed by you, the taxpayer. I'm going to grow the economy. We're going to generate massive amounts of revenue. And you better believe over time, I am going to phase out your property taxes.
Just to follow up to that, Mr. Doden, an elderly person in the state of South Dakota is eligible to freeze the assessment on their homes to avoid just the situation you're talking about. The city of Sioux Falls has an additional $500 assessment reduction. Why aren't people who are losing their homes getting the help that's available to them if that's what's happening?
When your property tax doubles in 5 years, a few $100s a year, Patrick, is not going to keep you from having to sell your home. Not to mention, on the bus tour, the majority of fixed income seniors I talked to either didn't know that that program was available or hadn't filled it out. And the politicians up here with me, they know this is a very widespread problem. I met a 91-year-old grandma. Her hobby farm taxes went from $7,000 to $15,000. Do you think $500 are going to keep her from having to sell her hobby farm? It is unfair to tax people out of their homes. I'm going to find new revenue to replace the property taxes, and I assure you I'm the only person up here that is dedicated to doing that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hanson, your background includes time as a student, a legislator, a law student, a legislator, and if I'm not mistaken, you ran the Chamber of Commerce in Del Rapids. But not executive leadership, not running a large organization or a government entity. What experiences do prepare you to manage a $7 billion budget and an entity with 14,000 employees?
Well, first of all, I have run my own small business in Del Rapids where I live with my family, my 6 young kids. And beyond that, I've been down in the trenches in the political arena in South Dakota fighting for the things that really matter to people most. I've spent time on committees in the legislature, both that deal with policy, but also that deal with the nuts and bolts of government. So I've seen plenty of the workings of government to know exactly what needs to be done, where things can be cut, what things can be made more efficient. That's exactly the kind of leadership that I will bring at the executive level. But I also want to say, there's more to just that story. The reality is the people want a fighter for them on the issues where they're really under attack, and that's what I've brought to the table for the people of this state. And whether that's been on life, whether that's been on private property rights, whether that's been on better education for families, I think the people of this state want a fighter for them, somebody who's going to put them first again, them and their families first again, not what we've seen in lots of the executive branch, frankly, where they're not putting the people first. Instead, they're using the executive branch to put big special interests first and big donors first. The people want that ended. And as governor, I will end that. I will run a better government that has been run before, and I will put the people of South Dakota first again.
Next question is for you, Mr. Johnson. Last year, you introduced a framework for data centers in South Dakota, but legislation that had a lot of your ideas did not pass in Pierre. So how would you garner support for that as governor, and what would you do on the issue of data centers if you were elected?
Well, there was legislation that did pass that took a lot of my ideas. Just as a quick recap, the Data Centers Done Right plan made sure that we were not going to welcome any data centers to South Dakota. They could not guarantee they were not going to increase our electric rates. We also wanted protections for water use. We wanted to make sure we're going to create good jobs. We don't need more mediocre jobs in South Dakota. We want good jobs. We also wanted to make sure they were going to pay millions in property taxes. Now, only if they checked off all 4 of those boxes were they going to be welcome to South Dakota. And so, indeed, there was legislation that passed that did a number of those things, and I was excited to see that. Now, one thing we haven't done yet is make sure that we're competitive. I'm a capitalist. Part of being a capitalist is make sure that you can compete in the marketplace. We have taxes in South Dakota that almost nobody else has. And I don't think it's conservative to have taxes on products and services that almost nobody else has. Data centers done right would have put us back in line with the regional average. It would have given us an opportunity to compete. Now I want to make clear, not every place is the right place for a data center. We need the right project at the right place with the right protections. And if we can't guarantee those three things, then I'm not interested in that project.
Now we move to a round of questions that focus on issues that each candidate will answer. And we're going to start with a question about parole. And this will be, Mr. Doden, you will take the first crack at this, and then we'll move down the line to Mr. Johnson. Minnehaha County has delayed the expected expansion of our downtown jail into the third floor that they had built for expansion because they've been able to keep the population low through a lot of innovative programming and pretrial services. We've got 4 special courts for drug users, mental health, DUI, and veterans. And through a lot of cooperation, we've been able to keep those numbers down. But now they're going up, and over half of the offenders that are in the Minnehaha County Jail are often parole violations or parole absconders or just return inmates. How are we going to stop recidivism of people just returning to jail one time after another?
Well, it's a great question, and presumptive parole, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, has been a disaster to this state. How did we get that policy? Well, my 3 colleagues up here, Dusty Johnson, Larry Roden, and John Hanson, teamed up in 2013 to pass presumptive parole. Dusty was working for Governor Dugard at the time. He pushed the legislation. Larry signed it on the Senate floor, and John Hanson actually motioned to get it out of the committee and then voted for it on the House floor. The reason our recidivism rate is the 3rd worst in the country is because the politicians to my right passed a terrible, terrible bill called presumptive parole and have been hiding in the dark for 13 years about it. We have to get serious about rehabilitation, treatment, and prevention services. Marty Jackley won a $100 million lawsuit against the big pharmaceutical companies in their backyard in federal court. He wants to use that money, and I agree with him, for rehabilitation, treatment, and prevention services. You talk to the experts, that's how you lower the recidivism rate. That's how you help rehabilitate drug offenders. But the fact that our streets are less safe today because half of our parolees are going back to prison, it's not the guy that's been building companies for 30 years that passed that policy. It's Dusty Johnson, Larry Roden, and John Hanson.
Thank you. And on that note, using my discretion, we have an opportunity for response. And since you named all 3 of them, I'm going to cut the time in half and give each of them a chance. We'll start with you, Mr. Roden. Your response to what Mr. Doden just said.
Well, I'll say this. Once again, it's hard to respond to Toby Doden because rarely does anything come out of his mouth, quite honestly, that's accurate. And I don't know a kinder way to put that, even in the last statements. So I'll just say this. Aside from what he said, we have issues, and we're addressing them. I'm not going to defend where we're at right now and some of the issues that we've had. But I will say this. We've already taken the steps to get with our law enforcement and the leaders in law enforcement in South Dakota, and we're going to fix it. And we're already working on it. And my guy, Ryan Bruner, my team is second to none.
Thank you, Governor.
We've been having conversations, and we will fix it.
Mr. Hanson, I'm going to give you a little extra time, so 45. Go ahead.
Well, there's a number of things that come to mind. First of all, when Dusty Johnson and the Dugard administration at the time came to the legislature, they said a number of things that they never followed through on. They said that there would be swift and certain sanctions when people violate. That never happened. They said that this program would save the state hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. That never happened. And so we do have problems with recidivism in this state with people on probation. And it takes executive branch leadership to rein that back in. Now, when it comes to recidivism, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I've talked to a lot of prisoners who have gotten out of the system. And I'll tell you the 3 key ingredients that you need to get rid of recidivism in this state. It's faith, it's family, it's purpose beyond that individual self. Those opportunities were eliminated or severely reduced under the current DOC.
You,
I would immediately reverse that.
Thank you. And Mr. Johnson.
So, Patrick, before I trigger my time, I want to make sure I'll get an opportunity to answer the parole question. This is just 45 seconds to respond to Mr. Doe. Okay, great. I'm not sure any of these guys understand Senate Bill 70. The question was about parole. You know what Senate Bill 70 did with parole? It did 2 things with parole. Number 1, it hired more parole agents. And number 2, it gave them more training. I'll talk more in my main answer about the problems we have with parole. But Toby, when you're talking about presumptive parole, you actually mean presumptive probation. Now, that's on the front end. That's not when people come out of prison. That's an attempt to keep them out of prison. Presumptive probation was not the focus of the question, and frankly, it's not the biggest problem we're facing right now.
Thank you. And as you mentioned, you get to respond to the main question. Mr. Doden, you started, so Mr. Johnson, as it turns out, you get to go next.
She was from Rapid City. She was a mother, and she just cried and cried in my office. I forget whether her son had died from meth or fentanyl, and I suppose it doesn't really matter. And she was angry. Of course she was sad, but she was also angry because she just could not understand why we were not doing more to hold drug dealers, repeat offenders, accountable. And I was reminded of that frustration when I was at the police chiefs and sheriff's conference at Deadwood last week. They feel like the administration, and again, the governor even admits he can't defend the disaster we have right now. He's not even going to try. But the chiefs and the sheriffs also feel like this is too little too late. We are giving offenders, after they come out of prison, too many bites at the apple. And that's why those same chiefs and sheriffs are working with me on the Safer South Dakota plan, because none of us want to have any more grieving mothers.
And that takes us to Mr. Hansen.
Well, thank you. Again, if the question is on both the correction system generally and recidivism, first of all, the correction system in this state has been a mess. And we've tried to do everything we can from the legislative branch of government to try to fix that. But there have been serious problems behind bars in our correction system, from limiting faith opportunities for prisoners, to limiting family visits, to pulling way back on vocational opportunities. Those are the 3 things that you need. If you don't want people to get out of prison and reoffend over and over and over again, which I think we all agree we don't want to have happen, we need to have those opportunities. We need to instill faith and family and purpose beyond themselves. Those opportunities were severely restricted in the DOC. In fact, it got so bad in the DOC that the Secretary of Corrections had to resign. And frankly, unfortunately, I had to kind of lead the effort to do that because she was doing such a poor job for the people of this state. If people are getting out of prison, we have a vested interest to make sure that we know that they're not going to go out on the streets and reoffend and harm your neighbors or your families. So that's exactly my focus. Throughout my experience in the legislature, I have been 100% supportive of law enforcement. I will continue to be as governor, and I will make sure that nobody is let out of our prison system unless we know with certainty that they will not reoffend against you, your neighbors, or your family ever again.
And Mr. Roden.
Very good. Well, a lot of ground to cover here. I'll start with the last comments, because I'll tell you what, it's your talk talks and your walk talks, but your walk talks a lot louder than your talk talks. An old pastor used to say that. We've been walking the walk, and I'll start with recidivism. When we had the prison vote this year, that was one of the biggest letdowns last year when that failed. We picked ourselves up, created the task force. I immediately organized a rehabilitation task force as part of that legislation, because that's absolutely crucial. We've got to stop the revolving door of prisoners reoffending and going back to prison. So we're addressing that in a big way. The plan we came up with was $175 million cheaper than the first plan, with 30,000 square feet more in rehabilitation space for programming. Talk about the women's prison that's getting ready to open. We invested $13 million this year in drug therapy sessions for 96 women, 4 hours a day. We put our money where our mouth is. And by the way, John Hanson and his lieutenant governor were two of the few that voted against that prison. And that prison's absolutely crucial to provide the mechanism for rehabilitation for our inmates.
Thank you, sir. And with that, we are going to take a short commercial break. But just a couple of reminders. The primary election in which Republican voters will select one of these four gentlemen is June 2nd. The deadline to register is 5 o'clock on May 18th. There's a bunch of new proof of citizenship stuff you need to know, so you better look it up. But we will be right back with more from the four Republican candidates for South Dakota governor. Welcome back to the Republican gubernatorial debate. We are in the Belbas Theater inside the Washington Pavilion in beautiful downtown Sioux Falls. And we've just come off our first round of questioning. And we are going to go back to a round of individual questions to begin this segment. And I believe
we will start with Mr. Hanson. House Bill 1212 would have created penalties for women who obtained an abortion. It sparked significant debate within the Republican Party before failing. As a leader in the pro-life movement, how do you define the appropriate role of criminal law, if any, when it comes to women who obtain an abortion?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the question. You know, just by way of background, one of the reasons I got into the crazy arena of politics in the first place was because I was so convicted on the life issue. I just could not believe the injustice that was taking place, where whole separate, unique, living human beings, their lives are being terminated at the hands of abortionists, including right here in South Dakota. So that's one of the reasons I was inspired to step up and serve in the first place. Ever since then, I've been very active in the pro-life movement. And just this last couple of years, I led the effort. I created an organization I called the Life Defense Fund. And we stood up, we fought back against the pro-aborts when they brought in an abortion amendment called Constitutional Abortion Amendment G. In spite of a lot of people who said we could never beat that, we drew the line in the sand here in South Dakota. We defeated constitutional abortion amendment G, and we kept South Dakota a pro-life state. Since then, even just this last year, we enhanced laws to make sure that if there's illegal chemical abortions being sent into South Dakota, that we have the tools necessary for prosecutors to go after that and prosecute the people who are trying to distribute those pills into South Dakota. Now, when it comes to House Bill 1212, I just do not think that it's appropriate that we send 19-year-old young women who have been coerced by their boyfriends into having an abortion and put them up on death penalty charges and try to throw them in prison for life. I don't think that's the right approach for South Dakota. That's not the approach I've ever taken, and that's not the approach that I would ever take as governor. I will continue to be a strong advocate for babies, for moms and dads in this state.
Follow up to that, though, would it be fair to say that you claim to have led the opposition on Amendment G, but you did receive significant help in that, did you not?
Well, you know, anytime you lead a grassroots movement, you bring in a lot of people. And one of the blessings of doing Constitutional Amendment G was really to see God raise up the right people at the right time all across the state in order to defeat that abortion amendment. But most certainly, when it came to the leadership of that opposition movement, that was me and that was my friend Leslie Enrue. Together, we formed the opposition movement. We called it Life Defense Fund, and we did lead the way, and we defeated Constitutional Abortion Amendment G.
Thank you.
Mr. Roden, you acknowledged that earlier you were talking about the prison and that you had the legislative support for the original $825 million prison. You had painted yourself into a corner. You said that recently on that by pushing for a do or die. The project that moved forward was $650 million after coming to an agreement with the legislature. Why should voters trust that when the next big project comes along, that you're not going to go for the more cost-effective version because we ended up saving $125 million?
Okay, well, I think I heard all the question, but you're asking why it went from 825 to 650.
You originally defended an $825 million prison.
So understand that bill was drafted and it was introduced and it was in the legislature, in the hopper, before I took the reins as governor.
But you got behind it.
I did.
You said you painted yourself into a corner by saying it was this or nothing.
Say that again.
You said that plan could not fail when you assumed the governorship. So the question is, how can voters trust in the future that you won't lead them down to some other expensive project?
Well, I don't. Could I have some time?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I don't draw your conclusion there. I was handed when I took the reins. That was the bill that was in the hopper. It was already in the committee process. When that failed, then we picked up the pieces. I met with our team. We organized the task force. My lieutenant governor, I put him as head of that task force, and we went through, they went through a very arduous process, and Tony did an exquisite job. Representative Hansen was on that recidivism task force with the lieutenant governor, so he can verify that, the process they went through step by step to come up with a new plan with a different, totally different schematic, totally different location, so it was apples and oranges. They completely changed everything around and then went to work with the contractors to get a guaranteed maximum price of $650 million. So I don't see that there's any way that you're trying to I'd heard some of that from Dusty Johnson's supporters in a letter that they drafted early on before the process started, but none of that is legitimate.
We're going to let Mr. Johnson respond to that briefly.
There were a number of legislators. I think some of them probably support my gubernatorial run. I think others of them probably don't, but I don't remember the timing of the letter, and listen, that prison was an important project. It was the kind of thing that needed to get done. Did it get done very smoothly? Did it get done appropriately? Listen, there were a lot of hiccups along the way, and unfortunately, we were told that as a part of the deal of getting that $650 million prison, that there would be huge changes in programming, so we didn't have what the governor called a revolving door. They have not gotten that done yet.
Mr. Johnson, you'll have your chance. We go now to Mr. Doden.
Mr. Doden, yeah, you've been a vocal critic of government-led economic development programs. At the same time, you personally benefited from federal PPP funds and leveraged those programs to grow your businesses. Why is one appropriate and the other not?
Well, first, that's a flat-out lie, Jonathan. You said I took a PPP loan, which most people don't even know what that stands for. It stands for Paycheck Protection Program Loan. You know what that Paycheck Protection Program Loan did? It saved 150 jobs and 300 family members from losing their homes, their cars, and their complete way of life. And for those of you that don't know, that Paycheck Protection Program Loan paid directly from the bank to the employees for 8 weeks. So I don't appreciate you saying that I use it to further my business interests. That is a flat-out lie, and as a moderator, you should apologize to the people here tonight because it's a flat-out, utter lie. Fact of the matter is I have dozens of companies, and one of my companies took one Paycheck Protection Program loan, just like 23,000 other brave small business owners in this state did. If the politicians had had their way, our state would have been shut down. Our companies would have been closed. Thousands of employees would have been terminated. Where would our state economy be today if we hadn't fought to keep our companies open? I'm proud of that one loan that my executive team did. I'm proud of the 23,000 other small businesses in this state that protected our economy and protected their jobs. And again, I would ask you to apologize for just a blatant, flat-out lie.
But your companies did take the loan.
Companies? Yes. You said the money was used to build a portfolio. It was used to pay employees for 8 weeks. That's a fact.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, if elected governor, you mentioned earlier there are legislators who support you and those that do not support your campaign. But there is a large wing of the legislature that is very populist, and many of them openly supporting your opponents in the race. That being said, how are you going to bridge that back together if you are to get the nomination?
First off, I would tell you that of any of the candidates up on stage, I've got the most current legislators who are supporting my campaign. And listen, they're nowhere near as important as everyday South Dakotans across the state. But if what we're talking about is you have a base of support in the legislature to govern, nobody's got a bigger base of support than I do, not even the governor. But fundamentally, that's not as important as are you able to build bridges? Now, you know what, I work with Speaker Johnson and President Trump in D.C., and I got to tell you, those are two as different people as you could get. I mean, Donald Trump and Mike Johnson are just, they're so very different. Now, the way they're similar is that they're both, you see what you get, and they trust people who are authentic. And both of them come to me on a pretty regular basis to try to bridge the gaps in the really pretty chaotic Republican House majority. And that's what I do. That's why I was there in the White House the day we ironed out the final details on the one big beautiful bill. Because I was somebody who could bridge that gap from the furthest right to the most centrist member of the Republican House. Every Tuesday morning, I have breakfast with the leaders of the Freedom Caucus, because if we're going to get good things done as a country in D.C., or if we're going to get good things done for this state and peer, it is going to come by people working together.
And now we will move into another segment of issue-based questions for each that apply to each candidate. And you will get a minute and a half, and there will be, if we see an opportunity for a response, we will bring that up.
Yeah, we'll start with Mr. Roden. There have been several attempts to include South Dakota among a convention, constitutional convention. This past legislative session, we had HB 1196. If a bill reached your desk authorizing the state to help call a constitutional convention, would you sign it and why?
Well, I would start by saying this. In 16 years in the legislature, I dealt with that provision almost every year. And so I've become somewhat of an expert, I think. I will say this, when I was majority leader, I got so tired of watching that come forward every year. And I finally went and talked, I brought the leaders of both factions into my office, and I said, I want this to stop. You're going to give us a few years off here because this is ridiculous. Because if you take what I've said 100 times, if I've said it once, if you take 100 of the most conservative Republicans that you know and polled them on that question, almost always you'll divide that group in half. And I was sick of it as a leader of our party, and especially among conservative Republicans, that it was almost become a sport to just introduce that bill just to watch us gutting each other on the floor. And so with that said, I've also become a lot more apprehensive about whether or not that's a good idea. I won't say whether I would sign it or not, but I will say this, I've become a lot more skeptical because I carried a bill a time or two for a balanced budget, and it passed. But then somebody reminded me once, reminded me, how are the Democrats in Congress going to balance the budget? They'll increase spending. So,
Mr. Doden, the question is to you. There have been several attempts at a constitutional convention. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I've heard both sides of the argument in great detail, and I genuinely think both sides have a strong argument. I mean, everybody wants term limits in Congress and the U.S. Senate, right? We can all agree on that. How are we going to get those term limits? I don't think the folks there are going to do it themselves. And so I understand that part of it. I understand we want a balanced budget in Washington, D.C. We want to bring the deficit down, and I don't know if those two things will ever happen without it. Having said that, there are some reservations. There are some legal scholars that have dug through this, and they're not convinced yet. And so as a leader in the private sector in 30 years, I gather information, I gather intelligence, and once I believe I have all the information to make an informed decision, I make that decision. Much like the data centers, I've met with the data center people, and they can't guarantee me that South Dakota is going to have the electrical capacity and the water capacity 10, 20, and 30 years from now. That's why I'm not committing to doing data centers. I'm against them because nobody can convince me that we're going to have the electricity and water. Nobody can convince me that Convention of States in 50, 60 years, 30 years, 100 years isn't going to start having an issue with Second Amendment rights, freedom of speech. There's a lot of big issues with Convention of States, and I just don't think it's a decision anybody should be willing to make yet. As far as Governor Roden, I mean, I think it's a good argument to have on the House and the Senate floor every year. If they're divided, let's keep talking about it.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, same question. Constitutional Convention, your thoughts?
This is the most political science-y question I've ever had in a debate, gentlemen. So just for people who are not total political mutants, what in the world are we talking about here? So the Constitution provides two ways to amend the Constitution. One is the mechanism that's always been used in the past, and that is the House and the Senate pass it, and then it goes to the states, and the state legislatures, 3/4 of them, need to ratify that constitutional amendment. Now, there's a second mechanism, and we've never used that one, and you can call a constitutional convention, and every state can send delegates. And I used to be concerned about a runaway convention. That's a phrase you'll hear. The people who are opposed to that kind of a constitutional convention, they're just not sure that we can count on that convention to deliver the proper outcomes. They're curious about them going rogue. I've got to say this, though. We have got to get a balanced budget amendment into place in the U.S. Constitution. A huge reason why South Dakota is so well run is because we are required by our Constitution to balance that budget, and so we do. And yes, we also need term limits. I'm on a bill that would have a balanced budget. I'm on a bill that would have term limits. We are never getting those bills through Congress. And so the only way we will ever get them is through a constitutional convention. Let's have the right protections. Let's have the right guardrails. But then let's go save this country with those two excellent policies.
Mr. Hanson.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I have supported those calls before, and I will continue to support those, particularly when it comes to term limits and a balanced budget amendment. We have a balanced budget amendment in South Dakota. I supported that. We desperately need a balanced budget amendment in Washington because Congress, including Dusty Johnson, is spending us into oblivion. We are $39 trillion in debt. About 16 trillion of that was added under Congressman Dusty Johnson. And for you and everybody else in the state, that means our money supply is inflated, which means every time you go to the grocery store, every time you buy something that you need, that cost has gone up and up and up. I've felt it. You've all felt it. That is predominantly because Congress has spent us into an oblivion and devalued our money supply. We cannot have that anymore. And what's worse, they ran up the credit card, but they ain't going to pay for it. That's going to be paid for by future generations. That's immoral. We should not be racking up our debt so much that we'll never pay for it, but the next generation will. That's irresponsible. It basically is disqualifying, frankly, when it comes to managing any sort of government budget in the future. And so if we're going to do anything on that, we either need to send better people out to Washington or we need a balanced budget amendment. That's why I've supported it in the past, and that's why I'm going to continue to support it in the future.
Mr. Johnson, you get 1 minute to respond.
The nice thing about having a voting record is you can go and look at the tape, right? Find out the reality. And I voted against, just in the Biden administration, I voted against $13 trillion worth of unnecessary spending. And I get it, we're in the middle of a political campaign, so sometimes it's fun to kind of throw accusations. But I think it's a little hard to blame me for spending that I fought tooth and nail to stop. I voted against the Green New Deal. I voted against the American Rescue Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act, Build Back Better. I voted against those things. Well, now listen, now that we've got a Republican House and a Republican Senate and a Republican White House, we have been making progress. Now, you're not going to solve this problem overnight. It took us 50 years to get here. It's going to take us a hot minute to get out. But we have cut mandatory spending $1.7 trillion just in the last year, and we are moving in the right direction.
Thank you, sir. And with that, we're going to move to education. We'll start with Mr. Doden. It's a specific question, but 52% of the state's students are proficient in English language arts, while 44% are proficient in math and science. What actions will your administration take to increase student performance? Please, sir.
Well, I can tell you, exhaustively traveling the state for 2 years and doing nearly 200 bus stop events, this question comes up almost every city that we're in. So when we dug into the numbers, here's what we found. Our K through 12 education budget, is the second largest budget line item, right behind Medicaid, $2.1 billion. It has increased exponentially over the years, and the problem is the money hasn't gone where it should be going. It's gone to lobbyists, it's gone to bureaucrats and peer. It hasn't gone to new curriculum. It hasn't gone to classrooms. It hasn't gone to rural schools. It hasn't gone to moms and dads so they can help with the educational journey of their sons and daughters. And it sure as heck hasn't gone to the teachers. We have to get serious about spending money on the places and the people and the things that need it the most. My Department of Government Efficiency is going to do a full statewide audit. But the second thing that they're going to do in perpetuity is manage all of the departmental budgets and make sure the money is going to the people and places that need it the most. And at the top of that list is K through 12 education. The fact that half of our grade school students can't read and write on grade level tells me that we have a serious issue. And as a business leader, when we invest $2.1 billion and half of our kids can't read and write on grade level, it throws up a big red flag, and I'm going to attack it as soon as I'm governor.
Mr. Johnson, same question.
There have been 3 different times that I've substitute taught whole days in South Dakota schools. Once in an elementary school, once in middle school, once in a high school. Very different experiences. You get a lot more hugs at elementary and you get a lot more shrugs at the high school. But it was an unbelievable eye-opening experience. And I've done it so that I could have some insight into what is really going on inside of our classrooms, what's really going on inside of our schools. I was exhausted at the end of the day. I had a blast, and I had newfound respect and appreciation for what these educators are doing. I mean, it is really unbelievable. And when I see other states, like Mississippi, that went from 49th in reading to 9th over the course of just 5 years, or when I see Alabama, who's now 38th, but started at 52nd in math. How do you even get to 52nd in math? I mean, I guess we're throwing, maybe they're so bad at math they miscalculated. They thought they were 52nd. But I see what they're able to do in a relatively short period of time. We know South Dakota is capable of everything that Mississippi is capable of. The only difference is that Mississippi has a visionary governor in Tate Reeves who went all in on saying that our kids are going to read. And when I'm governor, that's what I'll do.
Just to follow up on that, Mr. Johnson, part of the Mississippi plan also was extensive funding of pre-K. Are you willing to say it's time for South Dakota to have pre-K available in every school district in the state of South Dakota?
Well, we're not going to have mandatory pre-K in this state, but I'll tell you what, there are ways that we can get that early childhood piece done. I'm going to tell you one story, because it's from Friday. I went to Flandreau, and if you want your heart to feel huge, go to Flandreau and look at this new great child care center. They could never, no one entity could ever have done it. It took the tribe, it took the city government, it took business leaders, it took the Boys and Girls Club of the Northern Plains, and what they are doing is working. And I know my kids are big now, but the whole time I was there, I just kept thinking about what a great opportunity it would have been for my boys to learn so many great things at that great facility. We can get this done.
But again, returning to that, they themselves talk about the vital role that mandatory pre-K played in turning around those test scores. How can you say you're going to do that plan but not spend that money?
Well, Patrick, you can look at something like Mississippi. And by the way, they did 20 or 30 things as a part of the Mississippi Miracle. We don't have to take all of that lock, stock, and barrel. Honestly, that would be kind of a lazy approach for a governor to just say whatever they did, what we're going to do. Instead, we're going to look at what is evidence-based, what is consistent with South Dakota values, what can we budget for and make sure that we can deliver, and let's together come up with a roadmap rather than just saying, well, we're not going to change anything, just do it their way.
Mr. Hansen, same question. How do we raise those test scores?
Well, you know, for me, this is a very personal issue. Of course, I have 6 young kids. My oldest is 14, my youngest is 2. And so I know firsthand what it's like to be invested all the way into making sure your kid gets the best education possible in your community. I think that these scores that we see across the state are completely unacceptable. We cannot have 50% proficiency in math and less than that, more like 40% in English and science. Parents in this state deserve so much better. And so there's a number of things that need to happen. First of all, our funding formula is a complete mess, and it needs to be reformed. Right now, I think you'll know if you talk to a bunch of people in our rural communities, our rural schools struggle every single day to provide an education, but you know, the bigger schools, they seem to be getting along just fine. Meanwhile, teachers, which are at the bottom rung nationally in South Dakota when it comes to pay, you see administrators, though, the education bureaucrats, they're making a lot more money. I think that's completely out of whack. I think we need to focus on delivering actual excellent education for students. And beyond that, I think we need to put parents back in the driver's seat. And so whether that's in public school or whether that's non-public school or homeschool, I've been a supporter of scholarships for families so that they can choose the best education option for their family. I'm going to put families and kids first in this state again as governor.
Just to be clear, when you say scholarships, that is taxpayer money, correct? I mean, just define that for people. When you say you're for scholarships, what does that mean?
Yeah, correct. Yep, it's your ability to use your own tax money to choose the best education option that works best for your family. And you know, we have an existing program right now that I've helped to expand, and that uses an insurance credit that they can then donate into a pot of money at the state for more scholarships. And so we have these opportunities available in South Dakota today. We want to continue to grow those opportunities, create more scholarships for kids so that families are really in the driver's seat on education in South Dakota.
Thank you. And Mr. Roden, please, test scores. You've seen it, the administration up close. How are you going to do it? How are you going to turn it around?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. the test scores in South Dakota are not acceptable. We're nowhere near the bottom of the heap, but that's not good enough. The test scores that you said need to be better, and they're going to be better. In South Dakota, our Secretary of Education, Joe Graves, I have a great deal of faith in him and his ability to follow directive in changing things around. First of all, we're going to put phonics back in, and the science of reading, phonics back in the classroom. My wife Sandy's sitting in the front row. She's been a lifelong school teacher along with a couple of her sisters. I have sister-in-laws and my mother, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law. I was surrounded by school teachers. I was on the school board. I understand the importance of schools and education, and we are going to do better. We've changed our curriculum already. We're getting rid of Common Core math, and we're moving to common sense, so our parents can get re-engaged with their kids in doing their homework. There are a number of other states that are already positioning to change the standards and the testing to lower the bar. That's not an option in South Dakota. We are going to do better, we can do better, and we will do better.
Thank you, and with that, we're going to take another quick break, save a little time here, come back and get as much time in our last segment. So again, give the candidates a warm round, and we'll be back in just a minute. Nine, 10. And we're live back in the Belbas Theater in beautiful downtown Sioux Falls at the Washington Pavilion. And we're just about to start our final segment here with our candidates as they
We got some
come
candidates
back,
who disappeared.
come back from a little refresher break. Welcome back, gentlemen. I was worried for a second that you just chucked
We
it.
thought two of you were gone.
Yeah, well, it's been fun so far, but we're going to continue with our discussion of some issues, and we are going to start with some discussion of immigration. Jonathan.
Two South Dakota municipalities recently, Vibe, Oregon, Centerville, signed agreements with Immigration and Customs Enforcement to help with immigration enforcement. They joined 2 counties that are also helping, Hughes County and Minnehaha County. In contrast, North Dakota has 15 local government agencies that are assisting ICE. As governor, would you encourage more of our local entities to partner with ICE?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's really critical that we partner with our allies at the federal government, our federal partners, to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to enforce our immigration laws in South Dakota, because it matters. It matters to our communities. It matters to our citizens. You know, just this last legislative session, for instance, there was a bill that would have done some requirements to do EB-5 so that employers in the state make sure that on that level that we don't have illegal immigrants being hired by companies here in South Dakota. Now, you saw the lobbyists and the special interests come in to try to kill that bill, and unfortunately they did kill that bill ultimately sort of in the Senate side of things. But I have taken an active role to make sure that we enforce our laws, and that includes our immigration laws here in South Dakota. We do not want to be a sanctuary state. We do not want to have sanctuary cities across South Dakota. And I'm going to continue to make sure that I support our law enforcement and authorize them to partner with our federal agencies so that we don't have illegal immigration problems that we've seen in our neighboring state, in Minnesota and other places. It's funny how much a difference a state border makes, isn't it? You know, you see what goes on in Minnesota and some of these other states. That's the last thing we want to have in South Dakota. And so as governor, I'm going to continue to make sure that we enforce our laws, including our immigration laws in South Dakota.
Mr. Roden.
Yeah, well, been there, done that. A lot of this is old hat for us. As far as what you're talking about, didn't even occur to me that we didn't have counties that were signed up, and certainly support that. But what we've already done with Operation Prairie Thunder, and it's been pretty dramatic. In South Dakota, our crime rates this last year dropped by double digits, from 15 to 25% in different classes of crime that have dropped this year. And a couple of reasons for that. Operation Prairie Thunder is one of them. But I mention them because when we created that, they have what they call 287G agreements, where law enforcement agencies agree to train and help ICE agents. In South Dakota, we have Highway Patrol that are signed up under the 287G agreement. We have National Guard soldiers and even our DOC. And we deported out of our correction system, I think to date, over 20 inmates that were deported out of South Dakota, out of our country, because of those 287G agreements. On Sanctuary City, done. I think it was one of the first bills I signed. It was the first bill that I signed that banned sanctuary cities in South Dakota. So we have covered our bases in South Dakota.
Thanks, Mr. Roden. One follow-up. You've deported now, you say, 20 people out of the DOC. How are you sure that they're not just being released when they go back to their home countries?
Well, that's a great question, and it's a huge part of the process that we go through in vetting those criminals to find out exactly what's going to happen once they're deported, so so they're not allowed to come back into our country. So they go through an extensive vetting process before we enter into agreement with ICE to turn them over to them.
Wouldn't moving a prisoner from one country to a prison in another country be an extradition process between the governments?
Well, it may well be. I'm not involved in that conversation. I don't know what that process looks like.
Thank you.
Mr. Doden.
Well, this is an important question. First and foremost, I applaud what President Donald Trump has done. People like Congressman Johnson were very critical of Donald Trump. In fact, Dusty Johnson has undermined Donald Trump ever since he came down the escalators more than a decade ago. Remember when Trump said he was going to build the border wall, and Dusty Johnson fought against it, voted against the 2019 border wall funding. He's voted against ICE funding before. I tell you what I'm going to do as governor. I'm going to get tough on illegal criminal aliens in this state. We're going to make South Dakota a flyover state for illegals. I want to deputize law enforcement at every level so they can work very closely with ICE. I'm going to send a message to South Dakota, the rest of the country, and every country in this entire world. If you come to our country illegally and you end up in South Dakota under the Doe administration, we are going to hunt you down. We are going to put you on the 6 and 10 o'clock news. We're going to make an example out of you, and we are sending you back where you came from. All I hear from the career politicians is, I tried to do this. I couldn't get this bill passed. I couldn't get this bill passed. Those are failures in the real world. You either get results or you don't. In my world, it's win or lose. It's not, we tried to do this, we tried to do that. There will not be a tougher governor in this country on illegal immigration than me, I assure you.
One point of clarification that I'm interested in. When you say you're going to send them back to where they came from, if they don't go to jail, would it not be better for them to serve out their sentence here, better for the victims of their crimes, better for the justice to be served in an American prison rather than sending them someplace where they might get out and come back?
You want to pay to incarcerate them for 40 years, 30 years? This country is broke. This state is broke. Who's going to pay for it? Let's send them back. Let's keep the border wall closed and not let them back in. I'm sick and tired of people worrying about what's happening 10 countries around the globe. You know what I care about? I care about what's happening in this country, and I care about what's happening in South Dakota. It is not our responsibility as Americans to worry after we drop them back off from where they came from.
But don't we have an obligation to the victims to serve justice?
Sending them back where they came from is justice. Paying millions of dollars to incarcerate them and then have them get out on some early parole or probation, as Dusty would say, and back on our streets, it would be unacceptable.
Mr. Johnson, you get 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, just on the rebuttal piece, I've voted more than 150 times to secure the border. And listen, Donald Trump knows that. This is an area where he and I have partnered together a lot. In fact, after that vote that Toby's talking about, the president endorsed my re-election run for Congress. And in his tweet or Truth Social, he said Dusty Johnson is strong on the border. Donald Trump doesn't mind it when people disagree with him on an issue here and there, provided that they get the big picture. And when it comes to securing the border, he and I have been on the same page, again, 150 times. And Mr. Doden, if we want to talk about actually getting results, the results we've seen at the southern border are remarkable. Can I?
You have the actual question now.
Yeah, and listen, your question was about Viborg and Centerville, and so I'll just say yes, absolutely. I would encourage other local governments to get involved and support federal law enforcement. But I'm going to go to the southern border. I went down there during the chaos, long before the border was secured. And I did a shift with some unbelievably brave men and women from Border Patrol. And it was as busy could be all night. And at 3 a.m., we stopped a group of 46 Guatemalans, 2/3 of whom were children. They were hungry, they were scared, they were dirty, and I wasn't at all convinced that the men that were with them, because there were no women, were their fathers. For those of us who are concerned about human trafficking, for those of us who are concerned about the recycling of those kids, because back then our policy kind of let you in if you had kids, we needed better policies. President Biden opened up the doors. We had 8 million illegals come into this country during that 4 years, which is why we're on the front lines, why places like Centerville and Viborg do have to work with federal law enforcement so we can try to restore a solid border that this country deserves.
Mr. Doden, we'll give you 30 seconds.
Well, that's a nice story, Congressman Johnson, about how close you and Donald Trump are. Fact of the matter is, Donald Trump ran for president 3 times. You refused to endorse him any of the 3 times. Hillary Clinton could have been our president. You refused to endorse Donald Trump. Kamala Harris would have been the most socialistic, leftist presidential candidate in history. You refused to endorse Donald Trump. I don't think you should come back to South Dakota and try to convince the people that somehow you've been supportive of the greatest president in our country's history.
Fellas, I got you.
30 seconds.
Yeah. All right. I don't know where this comes from. Go look at history. In 2020, Toby, I was literally Donald Trump's state campaign co-chairman for South Dakota.
Did you endorse him?
Now, I mean, listen, I don't put out press releases. I've never put out a press release saying I endorse somebody. I just go help them win. And the bottom line is this: I have worked with this president. He's worked with me, and we are ushering in a golden age of America, and not fighting about all this political nonsense.
He never answered the question.
We're going to have to move on from there, and we're going to have a quick question here because we're going to move quickly to make sure you have time, and I'm stumbling over it. Constitutional Amendment L would raise the threshold of
majority is 60%.
Yes, to 60%. My apologies. Do you support the passage of Constitutional Amendment L, Mr. Hansen?
And we'll 45 seconds.
If you can keep it brief.
Yeah, 100% I support it. I would encourage everybody to go out and vote for that amendment. When it comes on your ballot, I support it when it came through the legislature. And I have a history of pushing back against these out-of-state, big money special interests who are trying to come into South Dakota and amend our Constitution, including with what we already talked about, Constitutional Abortion Amendment G, where, for example, the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, tried to spend $750,000 to amend our state constitution with abortion up to birth. I've had a history, not just talking the talk, but fighting back against those things, and this is one more step in that direction. It is too easy to amend our Constitution. It's being abused by liberals from out of state. We need to do what we can do to protect our Constitution, and so I would encourage you to support that amendment.
Mr. Roden, briefly.
Well, I have to agree totally with the previous speaker, and I've said it 1,000 times. Quit dinking with our Constitution. And even the most well-intended people they have a whole shopping list of stuff that they think is all right to put in our Constitution. It's not. It's not a living, breathing document. It was written by our founding fathers for great purpose, and we should abide by it.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Doden.
Very well said, Governor Roden. I couldn't agree with you more. It should be really, really hard to change our Constitution. I think this is probably going to be a layup, right, Dusty?
And it's Mr. Johnson's turn, so go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
I am also a yes, yes, yes on Amendment L. And it is, we talked earlier about how hard it is to amend the U.S. Constitution. I mean, it's only been done just over 24 times. And it is, in comparison, entirely too easy to amend the South Dakota Constitution. I think some additional hurdles to clear could absolutely serve the long-term best interests of this state.
Okay, one last question in 30 seconds, because then you're going to let your closing. Conservative critics of higher education argue it's become increasingly captured by one ideology. What would you do to ensure the state's public universities promote an open forum of ideas quickly?
Governor Roden.
Well, we've already done it. You know, it's the governor's job to appoint the Board of Regents, and we've got a good Board of Regents, and South Dakota is different. And even when we had a professor that made some very inappropriate statements about Kirk's killing, they took a hard stand on that. And we've done a lot of things in our regional system to help alleviate that situation.
Mr. Doden.
I love our four-year state universities. I attended Northern State. One of my sons went to South Dakota State University. But we have to remember, you as taxpayers subsidize $300 million per year to our four-year state universities. And I think for $300 million a year, we should get great results, and we should know that our children are not being indoctrinated while they're there. As governor, I will meet with the Board of Regents on a regular basis and make sure that this is not happening on our state universities.
Mr. Johnson.
I mean, culture is really about leadership, right? And so I think it is important to work with the regents and to have a governor who's focused on, let's make sure that those university presidents and the deans of the college represent a diversity of views. And if we're being honest, that has, in the last 50 years, has seen a huge sea change. It used to be that college professors were almost 50-50 Republican and Democrat. Now fewer than 2% at most elite institutions are Republican. We've got to get better leadership at the top who values that diversity of thought.
Finally.
Well, yeah, I fought the fight for intellectual diversity on college campuses. I've already supported laws to do that, and I will in the future. We got real problems. I'll be honest with you. We got some great universities in South Dakota, but we got some bad actors, including, well, there's a number of them, frankly, but one in particular who's the head of our OBGYN department down at Sanford School of Medicine, who is a liberal, and who was actually one of the doctors who was transing little kids, minor kids in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I don't know why the governor's office hasn't done anything about that. That individual happens to be a fundraiser host and donor to the Johnson campaign. And so personnel is policy. I will fix that personnel, and we will have a good Board of Regents again.
We could do a response, but we are not going to have enough time. We'll have to hash that out on the pages of the Dakota Scout and Sioux Falls Live.
Oh, there's so many more things we could have gotten to.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
We've reached closing statements. As you know, they're each 2 minutes. We will have that timer in the final 30 seconds down here. So, who's starting with that?
Mr. Hansen.
Well, thank you both very much for having us tonight. Thank you all for coming out. We really appreciate the opportunity just to discuss these ideas with you. You know, we've had a number of debates so far, and ever since we've been able to share our vision for this state, our support in this campaign has only continued to grow. And we're excited about that. All of the momentum and the energy and the vibrance is right here with this campaign. And that's because I think the people see that there is a clear contrast and there's a clear fighter in this race. Not somebody who's putting the special interests, the big money, the lobbyists first, but somebody who's working each and every single day to fight for you and for your family and to put you and your family first again. That's who I am, and that's what I'm fighting for every day. Not the bickering, not the back and forth. I'm looking out for you. And, you know, as we've done these debates, our support has continued to surge. We've moved up in second place in the polls. And so I think that presents a pretty clear picture for which way South Dakota could go. Because, you know, you all know Colorado. You remember when Colorado was a red state? Then it slipped to purple. And now it's just as blue as any other blue state in the Union. I don't want that for South Dakota. But if we choose the wrong candidate in this election, that's exactly the path we're going down. I'm here to offer a clear, different path, and that is a path where we lead with our conservative Republican values, that we lead with faith and family and freedom, and you have a governor in the governor's office who is rooted in biblical truth and conservative Republican principles and fidelity to our South Dakota and national Constitution. That's what I'm going to bring. I'm going to keep fighting for you each and every single day. God bless you. God bless the great state of South Dakota. I would be so grateful for your support in this race for John Hansen for governor.
And Mr. Roden, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I appreciate you all being here. I've liked this debate better than the other settings. I get to see real faces in the crowd and communicate. I thought long about what to say in closing, but I just wanted to remind people of a few things because it doesn't get said much in the debates, you know, what sets me apart from the other candidates. First of all, I'm the only candidate up here that's made my living in agriculture. For the last 40 years, I was born and raised on a ranch and own and operate that ranch now, but aside from that, just made a living with my hands. Also, for the last 40 years, 50 years, I've been a volunteer firefighter in my community. And I think one of the most important distinction is I'm the only candidate up here that's worn the uniform of the United States Army in the National Guard. And that's important to me and is significant in my heart because one of the most distinct honors of being governor is being the commander-in-chief of the South Dakota National Guard. And when I found out, when Tony reminded me that I'm the first governor since Joe Foss to be commander-in-chief who was a former member of the South Dakota National Guard, that with the fact that I was surrounded in my family by people who have offered military service, including World War I, World War II, Vietnam. And finally, I'm the only one up here that served as governor. And I've served efficiently, and I've delivered results. And so all you have to do is look at what's happened in the last 2 sessions. With the prison, when we picked the pieces up of that prison and got that across the finish line, nobody thought that was possible. But we built the relationships and the trust, and we got it done. This year, we delivered the largest property tax cut in the state's history. So
Thank you, Mr. Roden.
I appreciate your vote. Thank you all. God bless you.
Mr. Doden, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, there are two clear choices on Election Day this year. You can pick one of the career politicians, but they will do what career politicians have always done: overtax, overspend, and continue to make South Dakota less and less affordable. Or you can vote for me, the outsider, the businessman that spent 30 years fighting to dig my family out of poverty, build dozens of amazing companies right here in South Dakota, and build a culture of winning everywhere I've been. I will take those leadership skills to Pierre, and I will work and fight every day for you, the people of South Dakota. But I do believe our state is at a crossroads. Just a few short years ago, our state's budget was only $3.5 billion. Today, the career politicians have us on the verge of an $8 billion budget. And what has it done for you? Wages are flat, small businesses are struggling, and now they've doubled your property taxes. That simply is not sustainable. Our state is indeed headed down the wrong path. It is time to elect an outsider. It's time to elect a business leader as governor. I'm funding my own campaign. Why? Because on day one, I will never take a call from a donor, and I will owe exactly 0 political favors, and I'm the only candidate in this race that can say that. Every decision I make as your governor will be on behalf of you, the people, not the rich and powerful. You. Thank you, folks, for being here tonight. Thank you for the viewers at home. God bless all of you. I look forward to serving all of you as your next governor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
It was 21 years ago. I was in Pierre for work, and I got the call. My wife, Jacqueline, was in labor, and baby number 1 was on the way. So I hightailed it back to Mitchell, and getting there just in time. And before long, I was holding little 3-week early Max in my arms. And at that moment, everything changed. Max was followed by Ben, and then by Owen. They're good boys, and we want the best for them. Now, they're going to make their own decisions about what to do and where to live, but I'm a little selfish. I want them here. That's why I'm on the stage tonight. I want my kids, I want your kids here. I want them to choose South Dakota because South Dakota is the best place for them to build their lives. They deserve a state that doesn't settle. They deserve a state whose leaders aspire to more than steadiness. We really are at our best, South Dakota, when we dream big. Under Governor Janklow, we wired every school, we saved the railroads, and we turned our state into a national banking hub. Every one of those successes made us richer, made us stronger, and it created opportunities for our kids. I know we are a little state, but we are capable of great things. And great things do not happen by accident. They take energy and vision. Energy and vision that not every candidate in this race has. That's why I'm asking for your vote. Together, we can build the South Dakota our kids deserve, and I can't wait to get to work. Thank you.
And with that, I want to say, gentlemen, entering the public arena is a challenging endeavor, whether you've been doing it for many, many years or it's for your first time in. It's a nerve-wracking experience and a great experience, but I want to thank you for your time and your service and your willingness to take this up, and I just invite the audience to give you a thank you as well. I would be remiss if I did not thank a few people here from the Dakota Scout and Sioux Falls Live. We're thanking you, please. Our incredible crew from Forum Communications who got everything down here and got this baby on TV. Thank you. And our sponsors. Couldn't have done it without you guys. We really, really appreciate it. Poet, Market Beat, Howman Insurance, the South Dakota Corn Growers Association, the South Dakota Soybean Association, and Mitchell Technical College. Remember, the primary is June 2nd, and there are some new registration issues. We have to register by May 18th if you're out there. Proof of citizenship can include a South Dakota driver's license or identification card, another state's license, a tribal identification card, legible photocopies of your birth certificate. There's a bunch of them, and you can get them all online. And remember, if no candidate in this primary gets 35% or more, there will be a runoff in 8 weeks, I believe.
And probably a debate.
And if somehow we are blessed enough to be part of that, that sounds like a lot of fun. So that's, I think that's all we have for this evening. Everybody was great. We appreciate your
Great
cooperation.
Nobody got thrown out, right?
No, and
okay.
I had some questions about some of you people when I saw you coming in. No, and again, thank you very much. Thank you, the candidates, and we'll see you next time.